So you're interested in buying an investment property in South Africa, but did you know that the entity you choose to buy your property in can have a huge impact on both profitability and investment flexibility? Certain structures allow you to massively reduce the amount of tax you pay, protect your assets from creditors, and have powerful estate planning advantages, which most of us believe are only reserved for the rich. Now, many new investors simply choose to buy property in their personal name, rather than have to think about legal structures. And that's fine in the short term. But if you're someone who likes to plan ahead and make the best decision for the long term, it's important to learn just a little bit about the other options you have available to you. In this video, we're going to discuss trusts, specifically the Inter Vivos Trust, and how you can use this incredible tool to build generational wealth for you and your family.
So what is an Inter Vivos Trust? Well, simply put, a trust is a legal structure available in South African law which can be used to accumulate assets and protect those assets from all sorts of risks. The Inter Vivos part simply means that this is a living trust set up during the founder's lifetime to help achieve his or her goals during their life, rather than after they've died. Now, most historians agree that the roots of the first concept of trust came from medieval England. When knights went to war, they were obviously forced to leave their property at the disposal of other persons, since they couldn't be there to manage it themselves. In this case, it was necessary to implement the will of the initial owner, or the knight, by empowering a third party. And so the trust concept was born, enabling the empowered person to manage the owner's property effectively. We'll explain how this all applies practically to us in a minute, but first, what benefits do you get from setting up a trust and buying your assets in it? Here are 4 of the biggest advantages.
1. Asset protection. Any asset that is owned by your trust is safe from potential creditors. Because you technically no longer own the asset can never be attached by anyone who comes after you in your personal capacity. What this means for you in reality is that you can keep your business risks and your wealth creation strategy separate. If something goes wrong with your business, for example, creditors will not have a claim to any of your assets you've accumulated in your trust. Any number of things can happen. None of us can see the future, but with a trust, you can guarantee the safety of your assets that you've worked so hard for, and ensure that no one can take them away from you in the future if things ever go wrong.
Number 2, succession planning. A major advantage of the trust structure is that it continues to survive even if you die. And this means that you can pass down your assets from generation to generation seamlessly. Ordinarily, when a person dies, any assets they hold need to be sold and their estate needs to be wound up. Not only does this mean that the assets can't be easily passed down to surviving family members, but it means a massive financial loss in the form of estate duty taxes and executors' fees. But if your assets are held by a trust, there's no obligation to sell and there's no estate duty payable at all. This means that the full value of your assets are preserved for future generations.
Number 3, no freezing of bank accounts. When someone passes away, banks are required by law to put a hold on all their banking facilities, and this means that family members may not be able to access funds at the most crucial times. As an example, imagine your wife is the sole breadwinner in your family, and you look after the children and household. If her bank account is suddenly frozen upon her untimely death, how do you survive? How do you buy groceries and pay for rent when all her savings are locked up? Not everyone has life insurance to rely on. Because trusts are unaffected by the death of any one individual, their banking operations continue seamlessly if you happen to pass away unexpectedly, and this obviously means that your family will continue to have full access to financial support.
Number 4, tax planning. Now, whilst it's true that the tax rates applicable to trust are much higher than for most individuals, there is a special common law and tax provision called the conduit principle. And this provision actually makes it possible to pay less tax in a trust than in your individual capacity. Here's how this works. The conduit principle allows you as a trustee to distribute any profits before they're taxed in the trust to any beneficiary of the trust at your discretion. And this allows you to transfer the tax burden away from the trust and to the beneficiary. Here's how you can think about this. Another word for conduit is a pipe. So think of profits in the trust flowing down through the pipe to the beneficiary, who then pays tax in their personal capacity. You can distribute the pre-tax profits in the trust to any or all beneficiaries, and then have them pay income tax at the tax rate specific to them, which, as you'll see in a moment, might be 0. If you have a few kids, for example, and they're all beneficiaries of the trust, you can split the profits the trust makes between them. And since your kids are likely to be in a lower tax bracket than you because they don't earn any income, those profits will be subject to a lower tax rate. In fact, in the 2024 tax year, individuals earning less than 95,000 Rand pay zero tax. So if you have 3 kids, for example, that would mean that you get to pay zero tax on nearly 300,000 Rand worth of profits each year. Pretty powerful stuff. Then, because you'd likely want to get the money that you've just distributed to the children back into your trust to protect it, each child could simply donate it back to the trust, since we all get a 100,000 Rand tax-free donation allowance per year. It's pretty amazing how you can legally reduce your tax bill when you know how.
Now, there are 3 types of parties involved in the operation of a trust, namely the founder, the trustees, and the beneficiaries. We've obviously mentioned them already, but let's quickly take a more detailed look to better understand what's going on. The founder initiates the creation of the trust, the trustees manage the assets of the trust, and the beneficiaries receive benefit from those assets. Now, it's possible for you as the founder of the trust to be both a trustee and beneficiary of the trust as well. And this means that you are allowed to personally benefit from the trust whilst maintaining a degree of control over the operations of the trust. But a crucially important point to note here is that in order to ensure independence, trust must always have an independent third party called an independent trustee. In other words, there must at all times be a minimum of 2 trustees running the trust. This ensures that the operation of the trust is always objective and in the best interests of the beneficiaries of the trust. And this is a critical point. If you want to ensure your assets are kept safe in the long run and immune to claims from creditors in future, you must be seen to be operating the trust at arm's length at all times. In other words, no one individual should have undue influence over the decisions of the trust. And the way you do this is simply by ensuring that all decisions are made and agreed to in writing by all parties, including the independent trustee, before any action is taken.
So what are some of the disadvantages of the trust structure? Well, the 2 main disadvantages are slightly higher overall costs and more admin. Setting up your trust will cost a few grand, especially if you list the help of a competent accountant or trust attorney. And there are some ongoing annual running costs such as accounting fees and bank charges. You'll also need to be prepared for a higher administrative burden, things like having meetings with your trustees, taking minutes of the meetings, discussions with your accountant, drawing up resolutions to record decisions made, or keeping accurate record of all transactions. Your accountant or independent trustee will help you with all of this, so don't let it stress you out. It may feel overwhelming in the beginning, but once you've done it a few times, it's really not a big deal. The reality is that the benefits of using a trust to secure your assets far outweighs the extra admin and higher short-term costs. After all, there's a reason so many wealthy individuals use trusts. Have you ever heard of someone say, "Oh, he's probably a trust fund kid"? Think about that for a minute. A trust lets you get ahead by compounding wealth over time and over generations. Not only are your assets protected from creditors, but they are immune from crippling taxation with the passing of each generation. And this is why the royal family of England continue to use trusts up until this day, and why they're one of the wealthiest institutions in the world. So if you're serious about starting your own investment empire and building wealth for generations to come, you may want to strongly consider the Intervivos Trust.
Now, if you enjoyed this content, be sure to check out this video, which breaks down some of our best investment strategies. Alternatively, check out this video where we show you how to maximize your tax breaks with SARS when you own an investment property. See you there.